What is up, Square Nation? Welcome back to the Four Corners, the official podcast of No Counters, No Combos. And today we have a very special guest with us, probably my favorite member in the entire Dragon Ball Super card game community, just for the amount of enthusiasm and the power of positivity that he shares in all of his posts, Mr. Evan U7. What is up, brother? How are you doing?
What's going on, man? Not much, man. Doing good. How you been?
I'm pretty good, man. I'm definitely, doing all right. Everything that's going on in the world right now with the election and everything's pretty crazy, but, we're hanging in there, so I really can't complain. What about you down in Texas?
Oh, yeah. Everyone's just hoping for the election and playing Dragon Ball. People just trying to stay busy and stay productive during this time. It's not the best time, but, we got to just cope with what we got,
Exactly. So the first thing I want to ask you is,
Yes.
Where do you find your energy and your enthusiasm for the Dragon Ball Super card game? Where does that come from?
I do this basic question. I go, God. But honestly, it's just the fact that I always been a fan of Dragon Ball, and I always been a fan of just the show, overall, the whole franchise itself. So I always wanted to just enjoy a card game without feeling like I had to feel obligated to go a different route in the deck. So when I used to play Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh, I realized there was too much, I don't want to say ruling, but there was too much structure in the cards, So with Dragon Ball, I started to enjoy the game for what it was than any other card game I ever played. Mm-hmm. And not only that, it's Dragon Ball, so that actually is a bonus. So playing it, I just started to have a passion for the game itself, and I just started to really enjoy it. And I really enjoyed the fact that we don't have no card limits. Mm-hmm. The interaction is good. You can go different routes. You're able to take a risk. You come up with these different leaders, different strategies. So I just became more, attached to it, to where I end up selling my Pokemon cards, selling my Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and I say, you know what? I'm going to play a card game. I believe I could go far in this game, in this community. I think I could just play something that I love and just enjoy it. And I've always been a happy-go-lucky person, I pray, so I pray a lot and just pray to enjoy every moment. So that's always been my motive. And then also Dragon Ball is a big hobby for me and my friends. So that this hobby, it takes you away from what's going on in the world. So I always try to make the best out of the game.
Yeah, I think it's very important, like what you just said, about it being a hobby, to kind of give you that escape from reality. A lot of people, tend to do a lot of different things, and, people have their vices or whatnot, and, no judgment, obviously, to each his own, but
right.
Making sure you have that go-to escape from reality could keep you sane in the long run, A lot of different things that go on out there can drive you crazy. So it's definitely awesome that you feel the passion that you do about this game. And I think it's also really important for those that are listening is that, it all starts with a craving to have fun, right? Everybody starts a hobby because it's something that they enjoy. Now, where you take that hobby obviously depends on how committed you are to it and how serious you are with it. You can, take it down a competitive route. You can take it down, just for funsies. When it comes to trading card games, obviously there's the kitchen table aspect and the competitive aspect about it. But I think at the end of the day, when you're looking at it as a whole, these games are created for us to enjoy them and have fun. So I think sometimes us as competitors, we tend to lose sight of that. So I'm glad that you take it upon yourself to show that side of it. It's very important for the members of the community, and I do appreciate it.
Yeah, man, and I get a lot of tongue twisters too when I get excited. So what I meant to say earlier when you asked me that question was, I meant to say I have a basic answer for a great question. Your question wasn't basic.
Oh no, that's okay.
I didn't want the viewers to be like, oh, so his questions are basic now.
Nah, man, it's all good. It's all good. It's all love here.
I appreciate it, but yeah, man, the thing is, The thing is, I'm not here to bash other card games. It's just I had a lot of bad experiences and seen a lot of stuff from past card games when it came to competition. And I met a lot of people who left other card games to play Dragon Ball. And what I love about the community is that if they see something that's negative, I mean, just the community itself, if the community sees something that's negative, they're like, oh no, we're not going to have that in our community. Because I think that people are starting to see the value of the community, not to sound biased, but not just for me, doing me, but I think that people are starting to see that this game is growing, that this game is we're adding new members every month, and people are starting to realize how fun it is. I mean, I hear people that play Yu-Gi-Oh, not against Yu-Gi-Oh players, but I hear people will go up to me or they'll say, man, you make that game look fun. Or man, I'm thinking about getting into Dragon Ball. And I tell them you should. I'll never bash a card game anyone else plays, but to see that people get to see other people enjoy playing Dragon Ball, that's always been really cool. Other card game players will watch Dragon Ball players interact, and they feed off of that energy and go, oh man, what are they playing over there? Man, what game is this? And I ask them, like, what game you play? Oh, I play Vanguard, or I play this, but I'm thinking about getting into Dragon Ball. You guys you guys caught my attention. And it just grows from there, and people start to get into it, and then a month later, they have 2, 3, or 4 starter decks. I mean, not starter decks, but, competitive decks or, foil-out binders and stuff. It's crazy. I have a buddy who collects Yu-Gi-Oh cards. He met us at a local shop here in Houston called Heroes Collectibles, and we was play testing. He saw some Dragon Ball. So he saw us playing Dragon Ball. We kind of helped him get into it, and now he's playing SS3 Baby. He's playing Brawly Surge now. So it's crazy how people evolve in this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to start from somewhere, and obviously we've all come from different walks of life and, different experiences in other card games. I've played probably more card games than I should in my entire life, but, experiencing interactions in those other communities and comparing them to the interactions that we have in our community, Dragon Ball Super, there's always going to be some type of negativity. There's always going to be some type of drama because it's something that, when people are passionate about something and they respect it and, they take it to heart, there's always going to be some type of a, defensive stance when it comes to if you feel like you're being attacked or whatever, if you're defending something, whatever the case may be, there's always going to be some type of drama. But I feel like for the majority, of the lifespan of this game, the drama has been kept to a pretty manageable level. I know there's certain avenues people can express their disgruntledness on other Facebook pages aside from the main page. So there's definitely that growth into a more like, I don't want to say we're above anybody else, but there's definitely an understanding of the appropriate types of interactions that we need to have in specific communities. Like if somebody if somebody needs to air out their dirty laundry, there's a time and a place for it. And I definitely feel like we handle that pretty well in our groups.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
So I have to ask you about the hashtag Goku is your best friend thing. Where did that start?
Okay, so it's not a long story. It's not even a long story. So I stuck with the U7 Frieza deck for a very long time, and when TOP came out, a lot of people was playing it. So once a lot of people shifted from U7 Frieza before Invoker, just U7 Frieza deck, I stuck with the deck since then, and at my locals, I was still, people have different decks, but I still managed to victory strike them with Awakened Power, Son Goku. So in 2018, I believe, it was 28, was it 2018? Or 2019? It was a story, it was 2019, it was a story championship thing. And there's a lot of top tier players at the local that was playing that. Like this championship week or something, local championships. I forgot what it's called, but it was a lot of people there. It was like 20-something people. and we played from 7 p.m. till 2 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And I ended up getting top 4. And I just said, oh, okay, I won with U7 Frieza. I used Victory Strike. Hashtag Goku's my best friend. So that was it. I just did it because I kept Victory Striking people many sets ago. And I just became it. And then every time, as a kid, a lot of people don't know this, but as a kid, I used to watch a lot. I still watch anime to this day. But I used to always be the guy that would go, man, if only Goku was in this anime. Like I was watching Hunter x Hunter the other a few years last year, 2019. I was watching Hunter x Hunter, and of course My Hero. But Hunter x Hunter had the Chimera arc, and I was just like, man, see, if I had my best friend Goku, man, he would have just took care of this in a heartbeat. So give it one episode. Everything be back to normal.
So what is it about Goku that you like so much?
His positivity. And one thing I'm also in fitness and stuff, but I love the fact that he's technically an athlete in a sense, but he's very positive. And I love how he's always forgiving. Like, he's not like he's not like seek, kill, and destroy type of guy. Mm-hmm. So he's always been that guy that will let people live. So even when he was fighting Kid Buu, Vegeta said, you never fought to kill, but to get better. And I always kind of was inspired by that because even in real life, we have enemies that we either created or enemies that we have in our life. So I know that, obviously I'm not going to fight. I'd rather make peace with people than create war. And I always thought that's what Goku did. He was always that he was heroic, but the fact that they call it pure heart, Son Goku, or kind saying Son Goku, he always represented kindness and integrity. And I thought that was so cool out of every anime character or show that I ever watched. Not to sound biased, but he always, he fought for rock. I mean, he hit his head on the rock, but he had that integrity,
Right. And
then that itself, he crossed limits beyond limits because he wanted to challenge himself. And that's why I love playing Invoker so much or U7 Frieza because I'm like, okay, well, I have Victory Strike, but I want to challenge myself in every set. And that's what I've been doing since the TOP set came out. I'm like, okay, Goku, and I work out too. So Goku does, he does his training. Mm-hmm. I also do personal, fitness and in real life.
That's good.
So he has a lot of motivating qualities that I'm like, okay, no excuses, or all right, I'm playing a new deck in this meta. All right, let me tweak my deck and adapt it to the meta. That's always been something that I always told myself I was going to do. And when Bandai announced no rotation, I said, "Oh man, this was perfect. I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep challenging myself." And then Goku wins some fights and he loses some battles. So when I play this game, I don't get petty about it. But when I play, if I lose, I always say, "Well, Goku lose."
Right.
You win some, you lose some.
Right.
So I like to learn those other qualities from him. And he's always ready to challenge himself. He's always ready to challenge himself. That's why when I play a new player or play a top-tier deck, I'm always excited. I'm never intimidated. I get to see what can I do to go against him. So, hope that was a good, long answer.
No, yeah, that's great. I mean, Goku definitely, if you're looking at him as a character, he definitely has a lot of redeeming qualities. He definitely has a lot of, positive qualities that people could look up to, especially young kids. That probably aren't as what's the word I'm looking for? Aren't as tainted by what's going on with society. They're more naive, which is what Goku is. He's basically just a big kid. He's just a big kid.
Yeah.
He doesn't really think too much. He just acts. He just But the one thing I will say is you got to give it to the guy. Strictly speaking, as an anime character, he always works hard and he always wants to get better. And I think if you're looking at that in a vacuum, those are definitely, qualities that people, can definitely, look at and apply to their own lives. What are you doing to better yourself? What are you doing to keep pushing to make sure that, you're basically it just comes down to not giving up on yourself and making sure that you're getting your, your most potential and your fullest potential. I mean, I have kids. My son, just recently started getting into Dragon Ball and he loves Goku, which is fine. because he's still young, so it makes perfect sense. So yeah, I mean, I get it. Goku's a cool guy. He's fine in my book. He's not my favorite, but he's a cool guy.
Who's your favorite?
My favorite character is Gohan. Gohan's my favorite character in the entire Dragon Ball franchise because I feel like Gohan is the viewer. You basically, Dragon Ball starts off with him as a child, and you follow the entire series, him starting as a child, growing up, teenager, young man, adult, family man, and you kind of see his character arc, completed. And I feel like that was more relatable to me than anybody else in the entire anime. I mean, we're talking about relatable, but these guys are flying across the sky, shooting, energy beams out of their hand. How relatable can you get? But I feel like, yeah, I mean, I feel like Gohan's core values, I'm a dad, I have a career. I feel like I relate more towards him. So he's always been like my favorite character.
That's good. I'll tell you this though. There are a lot of characters in the show that I just have a lot of respect for. One thing I loved about Gohan, and this is actually, I think you're going to kind of like where I'm coming from this, is that you know how in life we all have like different seasons in our life,
Mm-hmm.
Like you have that hype season, then you have like that calm season. Like let's say before you had kids, let's say you were, on a higher level of sports, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you got kids, you took a break from sports, or you actually kind of put sports on the side to focus on your kids,
Mm-hmm.
and or your family. And I like how that's really cool how you say Gohan's your favorite, because with Gohan, he go from a kid, you watch him in the Frieza dynamic, and then he had that peak in the Cell Saga, because when I think about Gohan, I think about, he went Super Saiyan 2, he was this, he had that peak, he was the strongest at the time, and when you look at him as a, adult Gohan, and then you watch his transition to a family, I think Gohan is like the representation of what a season of life looks like, you know? There's a time and place for everything, and Gohan grew because when the BoJack movie came out, man, Super Saiyan 2 was on a whole different level, man. So when he became the Great Saiyaman and became the Mr. Ultimate Gohan, I was glad that he got those techniques and stuff, but to see his transition from being kidnapped as a baby, right? Mm-hmm. Trying to help his dad on Planet Namek, surpassing Super Saiyan, killing one of the most powerful villains of that time, taking out BoJack, a pirate galactic group, and then wanting to go study books, fall in love, have a child, and he goes, I don't really like fighting, Mm-hmm. So I always thought that was such a cool transition of his life,
Yeah, I mean, he gets a lot of flack, but it's okay. He's good in my book. I definitely wanted to kind of piggyback a little bit on what you said earlier about, when you're facing a new opponent or when you're facing somebody that you never played against or whatever, you get excited at the challenge, which is cool because I feel the same way too. And I kind of want to see, how that person's going to play the game, what type of strategies they're going to take, their player outs. And I always, I always joke about it, but there is some merit to it. I learn a lot from my losses, and I think losing is I don't want to say as important, but I want to say losing is almost as important as winning, because you're really only going to learn the most from your losses. Like if you're winning and you're not doing anything wrong, you're not really going to learn how to do things different. You have a winning strategy, you're going to stay on that linear path, and you're just going to keep, plowing and mowing people down. But when you start losing, you're looking at it from a different angle, and you're looking at it and saying to yourself, what do I have to do different to get more success? So,
right.
With that being said, I know you were talking about playing, Golden Frieza and Tournament of Power and then transitioning to Invoker. So, what was that transition like? Staying within that Tournament of Power Universe 7 theme, what was the transition like going from Universe 7 Frieza to Invoker? Because they are two completely different decks.
Oh man, that's a really great question too. I guess the basic answer would say, hype and I love you 7, but I wish I could say that. But so it was definitely overwhelming because, and a lot of people don't know this. To this day, U7 Frieza is still one of my favorite leaders of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the Invoker one, but that transition is overwhelming because I to go from a deck where it says pitch one, use seven, draw two cards, and to be able to use different characters, different colors, knowing that all Warriors of Universe 7 had no specific color costs.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to use different spices, it was easy for me to play in the U7 Frieza playground, because I knew where I was going to, and at the time I was able to play defensive if I wanted. I was able to play aggro if I wanted, and this is before Objection got banned. So I always felt like I had a lot of freedom to where I would think outside the box, but it would be through a what's the word for it? I have a lot more access to make fun plays, without having to think so hard about certain plays. Don't get me wrong, there were some times where the other decks I played against were pretty challenging, but it was just the fact that I was able to have a lot more tools and that I was able to use different cards without relying on the whole multicolor engine. So I was hanging on to U7 Frieza from going on to set 9. So when I transitioned into that whole Invoker, the role of Invoker, it was it was a little bit different, and it was also a little bit more confusing because I had to practice telling myself this isn't U7 Frieza. I can't just go that route no more. I need to adapt to this route because I thought that when they released Universal Onslaught U7 cards, they made before they even posted the multicolor cards, I thought that it would be more support for U7 Frieza.
Right.
So I'm thinking like, oh man, I'm gonna have more barrier cards. I'm gonna probably have an overwhelm, U7 card or something.
Right.
But it was definitely the transition was definitely overwhelming. That was definitely I think that's the word I could say because I had to learn how to use a new mechanic. Literally learn how to use a new mechanic that can do a lot better in the following meta of the game. So, and I started to realize that U7 Frieza was still a great deck. It's still a great engine to use when you use spices and stuff. But the whole transition from, I noticed that, I was drawing more cards. I'm able to shut down players' moves with, the multicolor cards,
mm-hmm.
And I noticed that the same type of play style, not to say it was Invoker Surge, but it was the fact that first time using the Awakened Surge leader,
right.
Not the typical pitch one, draw two cards.
Right.
Not the typical, okay, overwhelm, play this, and then play this. No, it was, and also when Objection got banned,
mm-hmm.
that's when I knew I had to learn how to use really, really kind of catch up. So it was definitely fun when I went from that to that set, but the play style is what really got me the most. And then seeing what multicolor cards can do with the whole Invoker engine after your turn 3, it was like, wow, this is more powerful than U7 Frieza.
Right.
This is more. I have more access to survive. I have more ways to work around it. So it took me time to adapt to the multicolor Invoker deck. So, but I would say that it was probably. I'm glad I did it though because it's still in the same archetype of Universe 7, just a different engine. Right. And I thought that was really cool. And then I'm able to still use my Secret Rare from the TOP set. And I thought that was really cool that I'm not tapping 2 energy to play a Invoker. To play Awaken Power. You want to Hope Universe 7. I'm only tapping 1 energy and then going to my Secret Rare. I always thought that was so cool. And then you're able to look at your opponent's hand and say, okay, let's send that to the drop.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like, whoa, it was crazy. It's still wild to this day that a mechanic within the universe of U7 was created to keep U7 alive though. So I'm forever grateful for Bandai for doing that.
Yeah, Tournament of Power was probably it was the last arc in the anime. It was probably probably the best arc in all of Dragon Ball Super. I mean, you could probably make the argument that the Zamasu Goku Black arc was really good for Dragon Ball Super. That's my favorite arc in that anime. But Tournament of Power definitely spent the most time and the most build up. Right after the Zamasu arc, building that event up, and then obviously the climax and the ending of it, was really cool. So seeing a whole archetype develop from that, specific arc in the anime was really cool. And obviously, Goku's, he's the poster child. He's always going to have some type of support, moving forward. Speaking of Goku's support, you talked about making the transition from Frieza to Invoker in Set 9. You did get the release of Rival Seeker in Set 10. So how important is Rival Seeker to the Invoker archetype?
Man, just to be able to, because at one point, and that is a great question too, by the way. At one point, you have to just survive to turn 6 and play the whole energy explosion. So with Rival Seeker, I think in my opinion, he was the turn 5. He was like the rebirth of Objection, to go into Victory Strike. I always thought he was the rebirth of Objection. And that he was that card because he was a turn 5 card that you would play. And it wasn't a turn 6. So he definitely gave you a turn early to make plays. Mm-hmm. But that card was much needed because when they had other sets come out, after Set 9, I think the expansion sets came out, I noticed that Invoker was getting slower. So Rival Seeker was probably one of the best things Bandai could have had made for that set. And the fact that it's a free combo card. I mean, come on, man. It was definitely the savior of the deck of the arc. I'm sorry, not arc, mechanic of the deck because a lot of cards do early pressure these days. And even when Rival Seeker came out, cards were still doing pressure. So when Rival Seekers were more reliable in the game, it definitely gave me more access to be able to out-combo my opponent plays. Mm-hmm. And then still have one more in my hand to tap 3 and to go into a bigger card. But it does get a little harder now because you have those free counterplay cards. Yes. I'm like, man, look, they need to let Manny's Achilles Zone come back.
Nah, man. That card's never going to come back, dude. There's no way. You're right. That card is way too strong. It was too strong when it first got printed.
It's definitely strong. But seeing that card come into the deck, though, it was definitely an Invoker saver because that early turn 5 to get that card on turn 5 because you want to survive up to turn 5 and then you go into turn 3. So that card was also, I mean, man, Invoker is so powerful. He tells you to add multicolors to your hand. Yeah. Then you get to evolve for free. It's wild.
Yeah, and then you have that burn combo that you can go into. You have your secret rare with Victory Strike you can go into. You can rip out your opponent's negate from the hand and almost guarantee yourself the win. There's a lot of different things. Yeah, there's a lot of different things that the archetype does. I mean, the one thing that kind of turns me off about it is it's the whole Surge leaders. I wasn't playing the game when Surge was popular, so that's like the one thing I'd have to really wrap my head around the whole Surge mechanic. I mean, it seems as simple enough, but I don't, it's not really my cup of tea. But since you're, that's your baby. Moving forward, I mean, now we're in Set 11, and there's a lot of viable decks, a lot of viable strategies right now in Set 11. A lot of counter plays running around. So how viable do you think Invoker is now, and moving forward into the future?
Man, because I guess. Like I did with U7 Frieza, you just have to see before. Like I'm kind of with you on that. Like before Surge, cards or Surge leaders were a thing. It came to a point to where you was able to adapt. I think certain archetypes in the game of cards were stronger than others. But at one point you were able to adapt. So I was able to adapt U7 Frieza through all these different decks. And then I realized, like I said, that whole transition and then seeing what Invoker do into now, it made me understand that I do believe that a lot of players, and this is correct me if I'm wrong, and players who are listening, please correct me. But I do believe that players are all about evolving with the meta as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to use the sources that I have with this deck. See, I learned that, for example, you have players who run Apex, and you got me. I run Awakened Power.
Mm-hmm.
I never had an Apex. I never pulled one. Never bought one. So I'm sticking with Awakened. But my thing is that you just have to use game knowledge on what's being played and allow your deck, even with Invoker, to work around the new meta and the strategies. And moving forward, we got new multicolored card support, and I'm excited about that. So that definitely makes me want to change my perspective in the game. They released a new card called Demonic. I think it's called Demonic Wave Explosion. It's a multicolored card, and that card even says, I think it lets you warp. You warp it. Excuse me. You warp it, and then you get to look at top deck. Same thing as the previous cards, but it's definitely. I think it would still go far, but it just takes a lot of literally just adapting to the meta and surprising your opponent. And I think that's the one thing I love about the deck is that my goal is to in every set that comes out, I want to be able to adapt the deck into every meta or to every set and throw my opponent off guard. Because I do believe that cards are still slept on in the meta. So, for example, when I went against, I played test against Majin Vegeta. Majin Vegeta is brutal.
Mm-hmm.
That deck is brutal, but I kept play testing against it, and my buddy had beat me 5 times with it, and I ended up beating him 2 times with it. So I learned that Violent Rays played a big part in it.
Mm-hmm.
Violent Rays slowed him down. I survived to turn 3, so my mentality was I need to survive to turn 3, and I'll be okay. And that's what I did. I started to adapt. I started to use different strategies. But I think it will still go far, but a lot of people are aware that Invoker is now vulnerable because you could pop barrier cards now. You could pop a Vegeta on turn 3, turn 4, So those are things I always try to look at, So I'm definitely adapting and practicing. But in order to keep playing a deck like this, because the deck is still good, you have to play test the decks that's meta. You got to play test spices as well. You got to constantly play test. And that's what me and my guys do. We play test like 3-4 times a week, because the decks that we love the most are usually the decks that we play the most because we want it to be good. But moving forward, the best answer I could say is just study the leaders, the cards, the top tier players that are making new decks, because a lot of people are going to use those decks in the tournaments.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I need to see how can I stop those top tier decks. That's all. It usually comes down to that, and it also comes down to just understanding what plays can I do if he knows that I run. 'Cause a lot of players that I play, not to sound like a arrogant person or anything. It's just a lot of people know that I run Awaken.
Right.
So their mindset is, oh, he has Awaken. I don't want to get Victory Strike. So my mind is, I'm gonna let him think I'm gonna play Awaken, but I'm gonna end up going the burn route. So I get to you're playing chess when you play Invoker,
of course,
and you have to constantly keep playing it more and more in every set because it gets harder and harder for me. Trust me, it's not easy.
So the card you were talking about, I'm actually looking at it right now. I think it's this card, Explosive Demon Wave. It's a 3-drop extra card, 2 red, 1 blue, energy exhaust. Counter. If your leader card is red and you choose 1 red card in your hand and discard it, negate the battle card's counter attack skill, then switch up to 1 of your blue energy to active mode at the end of the turn. So it's a multicolored Bat-Ring for Invoker, and then activate main. Yeah. Send this card from your drop area to your warp. Look at the top card of your deck. If it's a multicolor extra card, you can add it to your hand. Otherwise, place it on the top of your deck. So
broken.
Yeah, it definitely any type of counter skill that you can play efficiently is bananas. Yellow has Swift Retaliation Cooler. Blue now has the 5-drop Baby Ape, which sees so much more play than I thought it was going to see. With that unison, that card is crazy.
that card is the epiphany.
Yeah, it's sick. That card's sick.
It's so good, and I'm so happy they created Unique. But that card in particular, I was surprised that Bandai even created that card, because that made me happy to say that they're still gonna support the multicolored cards. But yes, that card right there. Now, for example, I may have to run one or two of those moving forward, you know, but because how is the meta going to shift? You know what I mean? There's a reason why they made those cards in particular for Invoker. I mean, yes, anybody could say, "Oh, it keeps Invoker alive," but what if counter is the new, the new trend moving forward? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, Counter has been in the game since set 1. Battering Laser was a set 1 card, but it was the only counter of its type. I mean, if you look at it now, like if you look at Battering now, you realize that card was cracked in half. It was a 1-drop yellow counter for pitching a card, so it cost you 2 cards to stop your opponent's only line of defense. I mean, if you look at, Mira Champa Battering, that was essentially a game-ending combo that you couldn't interact with.
Absolutely.
Now, if you look at counter, I mean, you have, I think every color has a counter. I know black does. I know yellow does with Cooler. Blue does with Baby. You have a multicolor counter. So there's definitely a lot of different options for a counter play now. So it might be one of those things that we start seeing more often now as the sets get, more involved with unisons, because there's not a lot of cards that interact with unisons. So you might get some, counterplay on unison or counter stuff just to keep the game interactive, which I think is what makes Dragon Ball such a really good game, is the interaction between the two players at all points of the game. Not just the combo step, but now you have interaction in the main phase. You have interaction with your combo. Obviously, you have interaction with your end step. There's a lot of other games that suffer because of lack of interaction. I mean, if you look at Pokemon, Pokemon is no interaction. You're just playing solitaire. Yu-Gi-Oh! At some points can be interactive, but usually the interactive cards that you have in Yu-Gi-Oh! Shut down your opponent's play for the turn. It's either they pass and try to recover, or they just scoop and go to game 2. So there's really not much. Dragon Balls are really good. Back and forth. Iteration. Them putting the combo step into the game, I think was the best decision they made when you're looking at the mechanics, like the combo step and being able to charge anything for your mana or your resources or your energy. I think is what makes it such a good game, because there's no such thing as there's no such thing as a dead card in your hand. It always has some type of application for it. I mean, Magic suffers from having to charge specific land cards. Dragon Ball doesn't have that problem. So it's going to be interesting to see, moving forward, how Invoker deals with the meta. But, I mean, it's definitely a strong pick right now. I know it's gotten a lot of resurgence. There's Aspira. He's one of the content creators on YouTube. Plays Invoker. So it definitely has its place in the meta. I'm probably sliding it in like tier 1.5 right now, just because it does have access to 2 different Victory Strike cards, and it does have access to that burn combo. And the thing about Invoker that I noticed, because I never played against Invoker until I just recently got back into the game, and the first couple of games I played against it, I got destroyed because I had no idea what I was doing. But once you learn how to actually play against the deck, it makes it a little, not easier, but if you understand what the deck is trying to do, then you can be ready. Not that you'll be successful, but you'll at least be ready for it. Like, I was having to, just trying to swing at it and aggro it down, but I was swinging at it with 10k battle cards as opposed to 15k battle cards. So I know, like, if I didn't have a 15k body on board to threaten, I wouldn't attack, because you're essentially going to get a +1 off of that. So I didn't want to do that. But like you said in the beginning of the podcast, you have to learn from your losses, and you have to learn from the other players' strategies and what their lines of play are. That's the only way to get better at the game.
Absolutely. And I I always I know. Well, with the deck itself, it was for me. It was always as I started to evolve as a player. I started to realize you can't really. I stopped caring when people told me what to play and what to run for one, and I just started to create. And not to sound arrogant or sound rude, it's just I would listen to people, but I knew I had a passion for something that I wanted to run. And it wasn't like a prideful or egotistical way. It was just more of a, I know that this deck can do great. I just have to show you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that was always the motive with Invoker was just adapting and understanding. And, I mean, there are times where, like Matt Sublett said this once. He says, if you know how to play Invoker without the TOP arenas, you would know how to play this game. I mean, you would know how to play the deck. So I started to stick with, because I Matt was here in Houston for a while, and he's a really nice guy, but he's like one of the U7 champs. But he told me that. He said you have to learn how to use it without thinking about your arenas. Right. And that's also something I started to go by too, because, for example, a lot of people think that, a lot of players that I go against would think I want to tap 3 cards to draw 2 cards. So when they swing at me, I would tap 3 to play Sleepy Boy technique and draw my 2 cards. And they go, oh, he really tapped 3. Now I had a D Magic in my hand, but after the game, they would say, yo, I didn't think you would tap 3 cards. I mean, you would tap 3 energy for that Sleepy Boy. So like you have to think outside the box as well with Invoker.
Right.
And that's one thing I like about it so much, because I do stuff with this deck I've never done with U7 Frieza.
Right.
And I just hope that it continues to stay powerful in different sets, because it literally gives me more inspiration to tweak the deck up. Like I'm constantly tweaking it up every week. I going against Dark Brawlies, Manja Vegeta's, the Brawly Swap. Brawly Swap and Manja Vegeta's are my 2 toughest matchups.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, it's like, okay, what other cards should I add to this deck, just in case I go against this? Because we do best of 1 here in Texas. We don't do best of 3.
Okay.
And I wish we did do best of 3.
Yeah.
But I think best of 3 is the best way. I mean, people complain about it being too late, but man, you do a best of 3? Come on, man. I think you reach your full potential when you play somebody best of 3.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you. Best of 3, in my opinion, it's the best way to play the game, but the other argument to that is it's also not time efficient. I mean, it's hard. It is hard. Like, yeah, when you go to like an actual tournament, you do get an hour time limit for your rounds, but it is really hard unless you're playing 2 aggro decks. It really is hard to finish a match in an hour. Most of the time, you're probably going to go into turns. I mean, we ran a local tournament a couple weeks ago, and we tried doing best of 3 because we're getting ready for a 1K event that they're hosting in New Jersey. I'm actually co-hosting the event, but we decided that we were going to do best of 3 so we can get ready for the 1K, with side deck and stuff like that. And we had to start an hour early. Normally our local starts at 7. We started at 6. And we got out of the store. I mean, we got out of the store by 11, which is fine. But, pretty much, I don't think every game went into time, but a lot of the games went into time. Like, most of my games went into time, and we were getting into, like, turns. I mean, we were finishing turns and getting, turn 2, turn 3, and game was over. There were a lot of draws and stuff like that, but it's tough because obviously you do have that restriction with time limits, and obviously venues can't stay open 24 hours for you to just finish your game. But yeah, I mean, the game, not that it was intended to be played in best of 3, but I think us as a player base and as a community just adopted the idea of best of 3. And then obviously it became official, more down the road when it came to Bandai and, the tournament circuits and stuff like that. Best of 3 is just how it goes. When it comes to TCGs and a lot of other card games, variance is a huge issue. Like if you're playing 50 or 60 card decks, sometimes you're not going to see your pieces. So it feels bad when you're playing in a best of 1 and you lose to variance, which is a valid way to lose. If you're losing to variance, it just feels bad. You don't get another crack at it, to try to pile shuffle or whatever it is to try to make your deck more consistent, even though it's all RNG. But yeah, I mean, I agree. Best of 3 is probably the best way to play it. You can, when you're playing locals, I think it's okay to do best of 1 because it is just a local tournament. That
for sure.
Tends to be more casual. But these competitive events, whether it's, obviously now we're dealing with the online events and stuff like that, I think it should be best of 3, especially if there's prizing and stuff on the line.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And also, people have favorite decks that they know for a fact that with the right side deck, it can knock that deck out, and they're confident about it, But like I said, we do best of 1 here, but there's a benefit to it of it being more of a challenge, because you're not sure what cards you should be using or you shouldn't be using, but you get to see what works. And sometimes the cards that you swap out, the cards that you use to tweak up your deck usually end up being lifesavers in later on in the game. And I think that was always pretty cool. I run combination attack is one of my favorite cards because you get to see somebody go, all right, I'm gonna use a 5-drop or less and combo the crap out of my hand. You go, you get to use cards that throws people off guard. But I think with the Battle Evolution coming out, the reprints, there's so many options, and I think that's what makes it challenging with the best of 1 because you don't know what people know. I run Victory Strike, I get it, but for me, I don't know what people are running.
Right.
Right. So I have to definitely, but in general. Like, because, I may take Awaken now and may put another card in, I mean, you never know what a player would do. But the thing is, you don't know what people are playing. I mean, you can see somebody playing Majin Vegeta, but there's different styles to it. There's more spices being made now. So a lot of people are becoming more creative and more aware of the meta. And I think that's what makes a lot of spicy, decks stand out, is that it throws people off guard. And a lot of cards, because cards are being released monthly, Yeah. There's so many cards being released, and there's so many, spices to be made.
Right.
So I just feel like it's just it's a good time, but it's also a mystery time. What I mean is, literally, you and I could play each other tomorrow, and I'll say, I'll play you with Invoker. And you would say, all right, I'll play you with Cell Surge, right? Mm-hmm. But I have no idea what you put in your deck.
Right.
I could kind of predict it, that you may run a 6-drop yellow-green Brawly. I can predict it, but you may go a whole different route. And now I have to process, if you did a best of 3, what can I go to defend myself? Because I don't know what he's going to do next. So that's what makes that game, that's what makes the game so good, Because you may think you're doing good. You may have 12 cards in your hand, Mm-hmm. You may have 3 energy on tap. Mm-hmm. You may have 3 strong battle cards. And next turn, the player do a whole different turn in your deck. And now you're down to 4 cards trying to process why you went from 12 to 4 cards.
Yeah, it's so true, man. Like, stuff can change in the blink of an eye. I was on Untap the other day just testing an idea that I had, and the same situation happened. I had like 10 cards in hand, and my opponent had like 5, and I ended up having to discard like 6 cards, 8 cards, because they had like Ribrians, they had a whole bunch of stuff to just kill my hand, and I was just like, wow, like, what do I do now? Like, they had a board. I was like, oh, they have board, but I have hand, so I'm okay. And then they dwindled down my hand. I had no board. I couldn't fight back. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those things where matchup knowledge is important to a certain extent, because you kind of have to know, like, the overall, like, meat and potatoes, what the deck does. But there's a lot of different tech options that, depending on people's playstyles, can completely change your matchup. Like, I'm talking to one of my friends, Brian, who's a former teammate of mine. Where we are now, it's set 11, and the amount of cards that we have in the card pool, there's a lot of cards that have been printed that have similar effects, and by similar, I mean like watered down. Like, you have, you have your really good cards, and then you have like a watered down version of the card. So like
yeah.
So there's tech options that everybody's going to be ready for what's expected in the meta. So like everybody knows that green decks are probably going to be running Dormant Potential Unleashed. That's just one of the cards they're going to run. So you're ready for that. You're prepped for that. But if they go ahead and they, my opponent's tapped out, he doesn't have a Unison, so he can't play Dormant. Okay, I'm just going to swing with this battle card. Hold on, Sparking, Shocking Death Ball. I'm going to negate the attack, and now I'm going to pop one of your 2 or lesses and then play a Surprise Attack Frieza for free, and then just do all the, I didn't see that coming. So you kind of have to pay attention to the older stuff that we used to have to play against in combination with the newer stuff, because if it catches you by surprise, you could end up losing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I always try to go by the what's the word for it? The trend of, if he runs blue, he's gonna run D Magic. If he runs green, he's gonna run Shocking Death Ball. Mm-hmm. So I always tell myself back in my head, you have to run those counters. And I mean, like even with the new draft cards coming out that say if you take the energy and tap, the new draft cards that say you have to take you choose a life and you choose an energy and send it to the drop. Mm-hmm. That's pretty crazy. So now I'm like, okay, well I may need to take out 2 D Magics and put in something else. Like I might have to shift my whole deck. But not just that, not to bring up Evoker, but just in general, a lot of decks gonna need to learn how to still remember what cards still exist. And I think that players sometimes forget that people still use older cards. And I think that a lot of the veteran players, like you're a veteran player yourself, so you know that if someone's at 2 life, has 2 cards in their life, right, and they have like 1 card in their hand, mm-hmm. and you tap 1 red card and play a Kaba, that's going to throw them off.
Right. Yeah.
They're not going to see it coming. So I think players need to be alert and just kind of just sit back and observe. Like, because my thing is, I always told my friends, it's so crazy how there's always going to be a leader that could beat a leader. Mm-hmm. There's always going to be a leader that could be a leader. The question is, what leader would it be? What is the advantages and disadvantages of playing these leaders in the game? You have Majin Vegeta right now, right? But let's say you get the set 1 Vegeta that you get crit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he takes a life and you do double strike crit. You just took 2 cards, 2 chunks of life out of Majin Vegeta, knowing that he needs his cards in his hand. You know what I mean? Right. So I mean, I think that a lot of people are going to start realizing that older cards will throw people off, and that older cards will also slow people down. But you also, remember, a lot of people focus on new cards so much that they're going to forget over time that, hey, a Shocking Death Ball still exists, or a Dormant still exists, or Denial of Hope still exists. My buddy Denial of Hope me the other day, so that threw me off guard because people would say, you hear people say this, oh, Denial of Hope, nah, I don't run that. That's too energy being taken. But it'll come in handy when somebody tries to overwhelm you. And they go, what, you run that card? Like, yeah, I do.
Yeah, I mean...
So it's just being alert.
Yeah, the surprise factor, it's a powerful tool, man. Like, in set 10, you got the counterplay cards that you can play for free if you control a Unison. So God Sealing Technique, Charismatic Villain.
Oh yeah.
You got all those, right? But then you also got like the watered down, like poor man version of it, which was like the extra cards that nobody plays. You got the Dragon's Bullet for yellow. You got the God's Black Slicing Kamehameha for blue. You had the Peel Off Missile for red. And you had the green one for that had Frieza on it. I forget the name of it, but they were all pretty much. They had like similar Dark Death Ball is the name of the green one. They had similar conditions. Like if you control a Unison, you can play this without paying its energy cost, but do this instead. But nobody played those cards, so it's like again, like I said before, you have like the expensive version that everybody plays, and then you have the cheaper version, which is behind the scenes. And if you slap that baby on a table and they don't know or they're not reading it, God Slicing Black Kamehameha is a great counterplay in my opinion. I mean, if you have a Unison,
right.
you can play it for free by discarding 2 cards. It draws you 1. It puts their card that's trying to be played that's 4 or less at the bottom of the deck. So essentially, the 2 cards that you pitched, you just replaced 1, and you just got rid of a threat that on board, and you played it for free. So you could be tapped out, and your opponent has no idea that you have this card in your hand, and you could go ahead and play it. So,
oh yeah, for sure.
There's definitely a lot of different options. I think for people who are just getting into the game, card games are always intimidating when you're looking at pricing. Like if you go online and you research the best decks, they're always going to have expensive cards in them. That's any card game. But if you really have an interest in playing the game and you do the research, Shenron's Lair is a great tool just to go on there and look at all the cards that are available, in the card pool, and you can find some really good cards. I mean, Final Shine, right? It's the two blue counter attack. If your leader is mono blue, negate the attack, discard a mono blue card and draw 2 cards. That's a great card in my opinion. I mean, it doesn't have the ability of getting cost reduction in Baby because it's 2 specified blue. But again, you have Revenge Big Bang Attack, which is like the money card to play in Baby, and then you have the budget version. So, there's a lot of different stuff like that people need to look at and not overlook. I still think the old counterplays from, what was it, set 7 that we got, Denial of Hope is a really good card. Preemptive Strike that we got back. We got Preemptive Strike, I think, in Clash of Fates. That was the first counterplay that we saw like that. I think those cards are all really good, but they just have specific applications. Obviously, you're not going to play 4-ofs, but they can be good in certain situations. So definitely don't want to overlook that in the slightest.
Yeah, and I always tell players, like new players that want to get into the game, like, oh, what if, how can I, they would say, how can I avoid like the trap cards, like a Yu-Gi-Oh?
Yeah.
I would say, well, you just have to, because I mean, to me, it's like, I think I go way sets back. I tell them, I say, well, you have to just observe the field. There's a reason why they have 2 energy untapped.
Right.
There's a reason why, like I go back to Invoker. You see the Invoker Vegeta, and I have 2 energy untapped. There's a reason I might Empress Death Beam you, Royal Combination you. So it's just using that, I guess, like my friends would say, tactics and just kind of like predicting what they're going to do. I mean, one of the most classic plays that a player can do, and this is my opinion, about this, is that when you face an opponent, right, and you out combo all their stuff, right, and yet you're at 2 life, you're at 3 life, but you're low. You're low. The best thing a player can do is do Overwhelm and finish you off with that Overwhelm card.
Oh hell yeah!
That's the most classic thing a player can do, and I think players forget that. Like you say, these also, and I think, like you say, with these old cards, I'm piggyback off you with that. Old cards are slept on, and if someone uses an older card in a top, that card would go up in price.
Yep, for sure. That's true.
Because there's a card that came out in set 10 as well. It was a 2-drop counter card. It was with Goku Black on it. Is Goku Black doing the Kamehameha?
Yeah, God Slicing Black Kamehameha. Yeah, the blue one.
Oh, the blue one. Okay, yeah. I think you said the black one. All right, bet. Yeah, that card is probably one of my most unexpected cards to play. I used to play that card in Vegito when I played the Star Deck one. Yeah, my bad. I thought you said black. I said I'm pretty sure it's blue.
Yeah,
but no. That card is those off because they're going to tap 2 or tap 3. The average person going to tap 2 or 3 energy to play a card that they need.
Right.
And you just send that to the bottom of the deck. Man, that card is so good.
Yeah, you're never going to get that card back. You're just never going to get it back.
Yeah, you won't get it back. And then you get to just say, I pitched 2 cards, and they have to go a different route. So trust me. Because, players, one thing I learned is that when you people give off expression in this game. You got to be confident when you play. You have to be. Because see what happened is, if I'm playing you, and I see that you have 12 cards in your hand, right? there's a good chance, 13 cards in hand, there's a good chance you're confident about yourself. You're confident.
Sure.
You're going to sit there and go, that's not much he can do, right? So compare it to the person that had 4 cards in the hand. And I would tell players this too. I would say, if a person asks you how many cards they have in your hand, they're nervous. They're curious.
Yeah.
Because that's the number one thing. That's a sign of nervousness. So, you gotta play it cool. You can't be like, well, I got 3. Like,
Yeah.
Or if a player sees, because remember, a player would give off the expression if they're losing or not these days and times. Because there's so much emotion and energy put into the deck. Especially with your favorite deck. You want that deck to win every freaking time.
Yeah, of course. Of course you
do. Because you want to be able to show that you want to. I personally believe that as a DBS player, I want to control the board at all times. Like, I want the player to feel like you got me until I can beat you. But I think every player wants to be able to win on that level. The only problem is that they get distracted and they get intimidated by the board, because the game is becoming more intimidating with more unisons, more new cards, the reprints, new older cards, like the Vegeta Anniversary. When they made those Vegeta Anniversary cards for the Vegeta deck, I used to play. I sold it to a buddy of mine because he loved that deck. But the deck got Anniversary support.
Yep.
And that deck is good against VJX. That deck does really well. It can literally aggro and pressure Super Saiyan 3. People don't know that. People go Vegeta ramp. They go the SS3 ramp is broken, and it's like, oh, but bro, the Anniversary for Vegeta Hyperforce. Oh man, it's just pure pressure on turn 2.
Yeah. People
don't know that because they're so busy trying to see what the person on YouTube is running.
Yeah,
so.
I mean that's talked about a lot. I think my buddy Joey from Crossworld TCG did an article this week on his Patreon about net decking. And, it is what it is. I don't really have a problem with people net decking because it's what gets your foot in the door. If you have an idea and you don't really know how to put it on paper, but somebody else has already done it, it's good to get, just kind of like the bare bones on how to do it. But obviously, net decking somebody's deck doesn't mean you're going to have the success that person has had with the deck.
Exactly, and I think that's what people get distracted by. They don't understand. That deck is fine. You got to get inspired, and you want to do it, but just don't know what you're doing or what you're saying when you're playing it.
Yeah, exactly. You got to make your own mistakes. You got to make it yours. My biggest mistake when I first got back into the game, I bought the VegX starter deck just to throw it together because it was the quickest thing I could do. And I just went online and just started net decking people and I'm just going to play this deck because this person did well with it. And I did horrible. And I was just like, why? Why am I doing this to myself? So then I took it apart and I built it the way I wanted to build it. And it was a little better, but it's just not my style. Sometimes decks aren't just not your style and you can't force it. You got to try it to see if it works. And if it doesn't, move on to the next one. But it's part of playing card games. Hopefully you don't have to make too much of an investment to get into the game. And then you can kind of have, piece it together little by little, a couple packs here and there, a couple trades here and there. Maybe if you win a couple of locals, you get store credit or tournament promos or whatever, sell off expensive stuff, to build your collection. That's what I had to do coming back into the game. So, it's a process,
Absolutely.
Man. Like
Absolutely.
It's a process, especially if you want to put yourself in the position of having success and having success for a long period of time. You got to adapt with the game, but you got to adapt with the game and stay on top of the new stuff, but you also can't forget the old stuff. That's important too.
Absolutely. And I these days now, everything what I do is now, like you said, was just keeping a certain amount of decks. Me and my friends, we usually keep about, the ones I play test with a lot, we usually keep about 3 to 6 decks minimum. And if we do, we just use the same color sleeves and then switch it out. I have my Goku Kanji sleeves for Invoker, but I'm running Gogeta BR right now, and I'm running Burnhan GT. So I just swap out the cards when I want to go back to back. Right. And you save so much money, but But outside of that, I think like you said with these older cards, I love how Joey. I love Crossroad TCG, man. I'm a big fan of that channel, man. That guy changes your perspective on cars to run,
Yeah, for sure.
and stuff. But I like how he talks about when people were running. Some people were running Go GTBR. Not this one, but the Destroy Kings one, the leader. Mm-hmm. And what they'll do is, you tap the 2 to play the instant apes. You warp and you draw 2 cards. Well, a lot of people did not want to spend money. Not all 18,000 members are going to have apes. Yep. It is what it is.
Yep.
So he was implying that you play the 1-drop Frost. You tap 1 red, you draw a card every turn. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was something that Joey brought up to imply. And I also thought that was so cool how he can remind people, look, if you don't have $100 to spend it, don't spend it. Like,
yeah, exactly. Nobody's forcing you to spend that $100.
No one's on point of gun to your head and saying, hey, you got to get this card.
Yeah, like, that does not happen.
No. Well, I'm sorry. No one's not going to point a finger at you and debt beam your face and be like, hey, I'm going to debt ball you. You need to get this card. Like, okay, Lord Frieza. But I'm just kidding. But also with the net decking, my thing is like I tell people too, because people ask me, I want to copy a deck. I say, look, copy it, have fun with it. But because some people will say, how did you top or how did you do so well? And I hate when players go, oh, it's game knowledge. Oh, it's knowledge of the game. I'm like, no, you just copy the deck. Relax. Just give credit to where credit is due, and then just have fun with the deck.
Yeah.
Some
people get lucky, man. Some people net deck and they get lucky. They're just good, I guess. But most of the time, like the people that top consistently, they've been playing the game for probably a long time. They've been testing and usually the night or a couple nights before the tournament, like when I used to play like my teammates and stuff, we would stay up for hours and just test and test and test and test and test. Until it's like drilled into your skull, where you could just like go through the motions automatically and not have to think too much. I mean, that's what it takes. It's just like playing a sport or practicing an instrument. Like you have to practice. That's the only way to get better.
I always check the Discord, and the Discord is Discord is, man, I'm gonna tell you something. You're sleeping and your Discord notifications, I'm sure you get this too, when your phone have Discord notifications from people around the world, 4 o'clock in the morning. I
shut my phone off at
night. Asking about cards.
Yeah.
Huh?
I shut my phone off at night. I can't.
It's insane, but it's also inspiring because these are players who eat, sleep, and breathe this game, Mm-hmm. So they constantly play test. Like, you wake up at 6 in the morning and go, hey guys, I tried comboing out this plane, but I wasn't sure if this activate main goes through. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, it's 6 a.m. in the morning. You're play testing at 5? Yeah. Like, yeah, man, or it'll be people in the group saying, I just got out for work. I'm going to play test and take a nap. Does anybody want to go on?
Yeah. That's what it is, man.
It's so cool, dude. It's
grind.
So awesome, though.
It's the grind.
The constant grind, though. But yeah, man. So I'm glad that Bandai is, I'm so glad Bandai is really, like, the experience I had in this game, just with this game, like meeting you and just meeting just DBS content creators and influencers. I never thought this game would create these experiences, Mm-hmm. So guys really been good to me with this. I met a lot of people, man. Like meeting you, watching your YouTube channel, bro, from sets ago, man. I remember we used to watch we used to go to the shop during the wintertime. We'd get our phone, we'd watch you do deck lists and stuff while we'll be making decks. And then we go to Super Players, and then we'll watch, I don't know if you remember Team Death Note. Do you remember those guys?
Yes, I do, yes.
Yeah, like that. We used to watch those guys, too. I hope they come back. But it's just crazy how this game, the content creating, there's just people in this game. It's a world of its own, man. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's so much to talk about, but it's really I'm thankful that Bandai didn't give up yet. Well, not give up yet. I hope they don't give up on this game. I'm glad they didn't. They didn't fall short because they're doing a great job.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Bandai is definitely moving in the right direction. The game is the healthiest it's been in a very, very long time, and that's not just my opinion. I've talked to a lot of people who feel the same way. There's a lot of different interactions, a lot of different decks are good. You can actually go and pick something up that you want to play. You don't have to.
Yes.
It's not like you're feeling forced to play it because it's meta. You can go pick something up and say, "I want to play this. I'm gonna make this work," and you can make it work. So I mean, that's what we want at the end of the day, right? Is we want options to be able to have fun, but also get success and good results while we're having fun. Because at some point, if you're having fun but losing, at some point that losing is going to add up, and you're going to start to hate yourself. But being able to play something that you have, being able to play something that you have fun with, and also get results is good too.
I remember one of the things I always enjoy, well, I do enjoy about this game to this day is that you know is that we don't like back in the Yu-Gi-Oh days. I used to play Ada's Pendulums, and I always thought that you watch the show growing up. It's part of the child. Yu-Gi-Oh is part of the childhood. So I never shame Yu-Gi-Oh in that way. I'm always going to appreciate Yu-Gi-Oh to this day. But I always thought that because of the show, you could run your favorite deck and go far in the Yu-Gi-Oh community. And it was hard to keep your favorite deck in a game that was just meta. And to see how, like you say, DBS is like, okay, you have options to play this. You have options to go to set one. I mean, people could come up with the weirdest leaders and just do well, And I love how you have options to win, just to do well, But I mean, I don't think no one's goal is to, like you go to a game, you go to a local every week and you lose every week. Yeah. And there's a player out there, right? And it's the thing that I really believe that there's a player out there right now who has a top tier deck that he's winning with, but he wants to win with something that's spicy.
Sure.
We all
do. What I mean? We all do.
Yeah, so my thing is, because I have other decks I work on by myself. I made a Goku theme deck with the new Unison baby and the Golden Ape baby and stuff. I made a Goku theme deck, and I'm trying to make it go meta with the new stuff coming out. So I'm constantly play testing it like every week outside of Invoker. So I'm glad that Bandai gave us options, man. And the fact that we get to use starter deck cards, like how he's saying Son Goku, to set one, and you can use it into the meta now. Oh my gosh,
that card's actually that card's really good. That card's really good, man. It looks like top 7 for a blue Goku.
For a blue Goku, come on, let that sink in.
Yeah, it looks at top 7 for a blue Goku. You play that with set 2 Vegito, which makes your Gokus pretty much every color. You're gonna search infinite. Like you're gonna be able to pick whatever you want. Because there's no cost restriction, just top 7 for a blue Goku. Okay, cool. I'm gonna add this Victory Strike because it's a Goku.
Yeah, and it's only because the guy that reached out to me from Bandai was telling me that he's like, there's only like 5 people on the team that make these cards. Wow. So you got 5 people being this creative. That's really impressive.
Yeah, I mean it's they probably pay attention to the source material. They have respect for the game. I mean, sometimes you don't always need a staff of 10, 15, 20 people. You just need a group of people that are committed enough and respect what they're doing enough to pump out quality, and that's what they've been doing these last couple sets.
I'm glad that they're trying to, be more alert of the fans. Because, like, my thing is, players that I don't want to say nag, but they complain. That's the perfect word. The players that complain a lot on the page and the rants and stuff. It's like, just what else do you want from them? They're human,
Right. Exactly.
Exactly. Like what can you expect? Like what purpose does that? What are you trying to get out of it? But one of my favorite things is that some players. I always think there's always going to be the 3 type of player. Like I said, the ones who enjoy the game for what it is, the meta player, and the player who just comes up with stuff that no one ever care about.
Right.
You know, and I always enjoy watching matches with players who come up with these most random things and they go against a meta deck and actually beat the meta deck. Yeah. Like they question themselves. Like, wait, was I supposed to play this? Why did he play that? Oh, why are you playing that card? He's like, because I want to. Oh, okay. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we're just a bunch of people playing cards trying to have fun, man. That's basically what it comes down to. But
grown men are like shiny cardboard.
Yeah, exactly. So we've been talking for a little over an hour now. It doesn't feel like an hour. It's been a great conversation, but
oh wow,
yeah. So sometimes you lose track of time, so I don't want to keep you much longer. So before we let you go, for anybody who's listening who wants to get in touch with you or wants to pick your brain about Invoker, what's the easiest way of getting in touch with you?
Oh yeah, for sure. Messenger, Evan Glover. I usually will have I post a lot, so I'm always willing to like talk to people. Do Discord, Evan U7, my Instagram, Evan Michael Glover, and then Facebook. Just message me on Messenger. I love interacting with players around the world. Though it's so cool. So I'm glad I could do that, man. Because you learn more about yourself too, about the decks that you run personally. So, but yeah, man, that's it. So yeah, if anybody need any questions, I am here.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it. Anytime you want to come back on and just talk about Dragon Ball, you're more than welcome. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure having you, man. I really had a lot of fun with this podcast. So, for those of you that are listening, thank you guys so much for the support. We really do appreciate it here at No Counters, No Combos. Just a quick side note, we're getting ready to host the New Jersey Computer and Gaming Universe 1K on November 14th. I'm gonna make a more official post about it probably sometime next week on my channel. But if you guys are listening to the podcast, I definitely want to let you know at least a week in advance that we are still going to be having that 1K event at Computer and Gaming Universe in Newark, New Jersey. $25 entry fee. Best of 3, tournament for, prizing and stuff like that. So just stay tuned to the channel for more details. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next week. Be there or be squared.